Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Good afternoon, Kylie. How are you?
I'm good. What are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about models and how we use a model to measure the impact of the visitor economy of Puerto Rico and the East region. First, let's clarify, the concept of a model. And a model is something very simple. It's a simple way to represent reality. And in this slide, what we're showing here is three types of model that exist. We have a map, and a map is very simply a way to understand a place and navigate a place from point A to point B. We have an architectural design or a building design, for example, and the idea there is to develop a model or a simplified version of what that building is going to look like before we start building. And third, we have a recipe. And in this case, the recipe uses inputs, which are, for example, flour and milk, that go through a process of, getting baked to get to the final output, which is a bread. So, Kylie, how are models useful?
The main purpose of the models is to help us understand systems, measure complex ideas, explore different scenarios, and help us make impactful decision making.
Good. So in our model, the inputs are what is the lodging demand, what visitors spend their money on, and for example, what are the different incomes or household incomes those visitors have. We take that information and we combine it with other information, and it goes through a series of calculations to understand what are the room nights booked or the demand, what is the average length of stay, what is the daily spend. And through that, we get to our final output, which is what is the direct visitor spend or the direct impact of the visitor economy in Puerto Rico or in the East region in this case. So Kylie, talk to us a little bit more about how our model works.
Yeah, so it's important for us to understand supply and demand within the Eastern region. So for this example, we start with the supply of hotel rooms available, which is about 867,000. And we want to take into account that throughout the year, hotels are not fully booked out. So we apply a 65% occupancy rate, which gives us our demand of hotel nights of 561,000. And we also want to factor in the proportion of people staying that are visitors versus locals. So we also apply a 77% our bookings from outside visitors, which gives us our final output of booked hotel nights from outside visitors in the Eastern region is 433,000.
Right. So we get that 433,000, which is now becomes an input to continue, our process to estimate visitor spend ultimately. And it goes to this input goes to another series of steps that take into consideration what is the length of stay of visitors, which in this case is 3.1, how many people stay per room. And the idea is to break that down by nights to understand how many unique visitor nights are in the East region. So we get the total unique visitor nights, and it becomes an input in this model. And the reason why we want to understand unique visitor nights is because we have a separate model where we model visitor behavior. Visitors will behave differently depending on their household income and where they stay in Puerto Rico. And for this visitor segment that we're using as an example, which are visitors that are booking endorsed properties or staying in hotel properties, we know that they can spend up $468 a day. So we get the total unique visitor nights, which are 1 million, and we multiply that by $468 on a daily basis, and we get to 500 million in direct spend. So visitors that are staying in endorsed properties are spending $500 million. So, and that is not the only, obviously, visitor segment in Puerto Rico. People stay in non-endorsed properties too. They stay in short-term rentals. They stay with friends and families. They stay with they come in cruises. And when you add up the expense of every single one of those visitor cohorts, you get a total visitor spend of 1.2 billion in the East region alone. And that is very significant.
So with our model, we're able to see the major impact that the visitor economy has had on Puerto Rico. So in 2024, direct visitor spend was $7.1 billion, and the Eastern region made up 17% of that, with the $1.2 billion in visitor spend.
Yeah. And, this is how a model can help us represent reality. We can see how significant is the visitor spend in the East region through this process. What else is the model useful for, Kylie?
Yeah, and so with our model, we're able to project out into years like 2030 and see that non-resident visitor spend almost doubles in the year 2030 to $2.3 billion.
Yeah, and that is a very important projection, because we can, like we explained in the beginning, we can explore different scenarios. And this is a scenario where if the visitor economy continues to grow how it's growing right now, this can be a very significant lifeline for the economy of the East region, and beyond that, a very important economic development opportunity. Exactly. What else can we do with the output of our model?
Yeah, in addition to projecting out visitor spend, we can also use the model to see the impact that the visitor economy has on jobs. So in 2024, in the Eastern region, the visitor economy contributed to 15,000 jobs in that region, and is set to grow to 17,000 jobs in 2025.
Great. And that is obviously very important. Just to summarize what we have touched upon in this presentation. So what do we want you to learn here? So reality is very complex, and there are no perfect models. What our work here is trying to make simple represent a reality of what the visitor impact, the visitor spend in the East region, and what is that impact of tourism activity in the region. Models are composed of three things. You can call it inputs, rules, and outputs. The models are very useful because, again, they can help us test ideas and understand different scenarios. And that is very powerful when it comes to planning and understanding what can happen and what decisions we need to make. Ultimately, this model that we built is trying to help us understand what is the real impact of the visitor economy, taking into consideration all its complexity, because the visitor economy is not an industry, or tourism is not an industry. It's something that is composed of many sectors, and it's very interconnected. So it's very hard to measure, and we're trying to make the best job we can to measure its impact. And ultimately, the takeaway here is that the visitor economy is very important for the economic sustainability of Puerto Rico, but more so of the East region. And as we can see, it also represents a very important development and growth opportunity, and that's something to consider. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much, Kylie, for being here with us. I just want to tell to everyone, we have this presentation and the full report where our model is described and the visitor economy impact available in our website. So feel free to go to foundationforpuertorico.org and our social media pages and find out more information. We will be covering more information and more videos, so stay tuned.